Hello, fellow Supermoms, Nadine here with a difficult topic today talking war. Why and how you should talk about war with your child, especially your anxious and special needs child. No matter the age. In this episode, I will give you some easy pointers, tips on how to talk about the subject with your children, whether they're a little bit younger or whether they're teenagers. First of all, why? Why would you talk about such a scary subject as war? And what's going on in Ukraine right now? Isn't it better just to turn off the TV and the radio the moment it's on? And why would you upset your child? Isn't it way better to protect them from nasty things like this? Well, no. First of all, they notice way more, see way more, hear way more than you realize. Even when they're trying to make the gesture for a small child, but you can't see that, of course. But even when they're like 2-3 years old, they notice that you're upset. They notice that you quickly turn off the TV or the radio. They notice that you suddenly stop talking when you're entering a room. They notice that you're talking about or saying to a teacher or a neighbor or someone in the store, "Oh, did you hear about that explosion? Or did you hear about..." They notice all those things. Also, so they see things, they hear things. Number 3, they're not stupid. So they're connecting the dots. They're like, something is going on. And why you should talk about it. Number 4 is, fear feeds on not knowing, feeds on not having information. Kids, however small, they notice when adults get anxious or when they're upset or when they're, if there's something going on. And if they ask you about what's going on and you dismiss it with, "Oh, it's nothing," and go on play, well, it's just confirming their suspicions that there's something going on. And it must be something really, really bad because they're not allowed to hear about it. And that's really scary, if you're being kept in the dark. So it will only make them more anxious. And fear on not knowing what's going on and not being told, and with that not having a bit of control. And of course you can't control war, but you can control a little bit of, helping your kids grasp what's going on. And with that, I will give you some tips, because how do you talk about war with your child? Whether, when they're 4 years old or when they're a teenager. And of course it can depend on where you are in the world, where you're located. Perhaps if you have a military child, and that's already a whole different level. But also, of course, the IQ of your child, the special needs. But some pointers: first of all, listen and acknowledge their feelings. Don't dismiss it. And if you hear them, and sometimes you can already see it in the way they play, or when they're asking things, or when they're getting upset, acknowledge those feelings. And if they have certain questions and you don't know the answer, go look it up. Not randomly. Please check your data information. But it can help you if they have questions and you don't have an answer to. Don't be afraid to say that you don't have the answer, you don't have the solution, but you can help them. A few things. So if you have a really small kid, well, really small, you have a kid that's like 4 years old or 6 years old, grab a globe. Seriously. especially if you're a bit further away from the conflict, it helps them, if you move the globe around, to show them, well, this is where at the moment Ukraine is, but it can be any conflict, because there are like 21 of these conflicts, wars going on at the moment in the world. We don't hear about all of them. So, you can, when we're talking about Ukraine, point out where the Ukraine is and where you are in the world. And that distance, seeing it on the globe, can already help them. It's further away, it's not next door. And if they still have a hard time grasping time and distance, try to translate it in, long flights or road trips you took. And remember that time we went to, Disney? It sounds weird to compare something like that, but it can help your kid grasp, it's a really long distance away. And it's not next door. If your kid is young, the second one is keep it simple. Just say, there's a really bad man and he wants to be the boss of everybody, and he wants everybody to follow his rules and only his rules. And that's that. You don't have to go into details with your young child. Especially when you have young children, it's quite easy to just talk about just good and bad. Not talking about grace, just a bad man, and he wants to be the boss of everybody. And that's why he's so mean. And there are several countries that have news, especially geared to children, and they can be great resources. In the Netherlands, we have an evening news, early in the evening, especially geared to elementary school kids, and maybe last 2 years of middle school. So elementary, halfway middle school age. And they explain what's going on in the world, not only, with the Ukraine and everything, but also when COVID came, they talk about it in a more simple way, and they explain it in a kids level. And it, see if there's something like that in your country. It can make a big difference. If you have an older kid, again, get that globe. Wonderboy, my Wonderboy, turned 18. The moment Putin went mad, and he was really anxious, really scared. He was so upset. First of all, we're a military family, so he just thought, my dad is going to get deployed. I won't even see him on my birthday, because the shit hit the fan on Thursday, and Wonderboy's birthday was the 18th. And it sounds really simple, what are you worried about? But it's a big thing. Turning 18, at least in the Netherlands, and any birthday. Those are those markers throughout the year. And for Wonderboy, it's already a difficult situation, because there are always expectations, and it's stressful because there are a lot of people and what to expect. So it's already a stressful time. And then this came along, and my husband was already not at home and making long hours prior to when Russia invaded the Ukraine. But he was really afraid also because he turned 18. So he was like, maybe I have to join the military. Maybe I have to fight. So we had to sit him down. And of course, we don't know what is going to happen tomorrow, but we had to sit him down, explain, a little bit of, how is this working and why we're not immediately having World War III and the steps like that. And of course, depends on the IQ of your kid, but it really helped my kids when my husband was, not being stressed or anxious, and calmed down before he talked to my son. It made it feel better. But what also really helped, again, the globe. We have this globe in our house, with a light bulb in it. And even when you're older, it's great to, see where everything is in the country. It's great when you're watching the news. Anyway, rabbit hole. So we grabbed the globe and we showed them, okay, he was already looking, okay, where's the Ukraine? Okay, it's about this country and we're there and this is Russia. And you know, all these states, and we talked about the Cold War, we brought that in. Because that's the second thing. You can bring in, depending on the IQ of your kid, depending their interest and their scope, of course. We talked about history. Why is this happening? Why is Putin claiming he can invade the Ukraine? So we brought in history. We also explained the difference between the Western approach and the approach countries like Russia have. For the Western world, for a lot of countries, military, you know, is the last resort. Going, using violence is the last approach you use, turning to violence. For a lot of countries, however, especially when there are dictators, it's the first approach. So, in our point of view, you would never, bully someone and be mean first. First, you try to talk, then you try to find a solution. For a lot of countries, however, being that bully is the first thing to keep people in check. You saw it with Russia. You see it with other countries where there's more a dictator going on, dictatorship. So it can help them see, okay, why are they doing that? Well, unfortunately, where we see violence as the last resort, especially people that want to be in control, dictatorships, it's the first thing they use. So there's a big gap between how Western democratic countries work and how different types of governments work, so to speak. If you have a peacekeeper and he's like, why is NATO not involved? And this is a really touchy subject. And sometimes it's great to watch, the talk shows where they bring in old commanders-in-chief because they can talk a bit more freely, but they can explain that it sounds, because it's awful what's going on there, we should all join and have NATO start and being involved. But that sounds like a good solution, but what most people don't realize is it won't get any better with that in Ukraine, because it will only make the conflict in Ukraine and the fights even bigger in that area. So it doesn't bring an easy solution. There is no easy solution, unfortunately. Well, Putin getting out of a sovereign country, of course, but there is no easy solution to your kid, and you can talk about it and how it frustrates you. And but especially if your kid is really anxious, of course, you can talk about a little bit about it. You might be afraid or you find this strange, but don't show your own anxiety to your already anxious kid. Try to find answers, try to find resources, compare resources, especially if you're not really into this subject. There are so many so-called experts, like you had with COVID as well, that suddenly know about what should you do and how the Russians work and the Ukraine and the NATO. Well, often make sure you have your information not just from one weird resource. Now I'm already judging, but make sure you check your information. And often there are YouTube channels that explain already things on how it worked during the Cold War, and why Putin thinks he can claim certain countries, and why he, that shouldn't be the case. If your kid can handle it, watch the news together. Ask them what they think about it, what their worries are, and don't go all, it will be all right. Because we don't know. And you can't promise that, how awful as it is, but you can acknowledge their feelings. So, touchy subject. And, there is no easy solution, unfortunately. There is no world peace tomorrow, as much as how we liked it to be. But acknowledge the feelings of your kids. Notice, when they're small, when they're older, no matter the age. Notice, how they react to things. If they have worries, if they express them, acknowledge them. And if you don't, and of course we don't know all the answers, but if they have certain questions, maybe, first try to find information that can help them. Grab that globe, especially if you're a bit further away from the conflict. It can, help them relax a little bit. And when your kid is really young, dumb it down. Just talk about a bad man versus a good man, a bully versus, just talk about, a bully trying to be the boss of everybody. And if your kid is a little bit older, and of course the IQ comes in how much you can talk about it. Talk about the history. Try to explain what's behind this conflict, what started this conflict, besides the lunatic in Russia. Talk about it. Use that globe to visualize it. Translate it into to time and distance using everyday examples. If your kid has a hard time grasping time and distance, and see if you can watch the news together, especially geared to kids. Maybe a talk show, if you're sure, the people that are on the table know a lot about the subject. See if you can find interesting YouTube channels with historians explaining things, because there's a lot of out there. But in the end, acknowledge the feelings of your kids. Don't push them away. Don't keep them in the dark, because it will only make it way more scary for them if they're apparently not allowed to hear anything about it, because then it must be really bad. Of course it is, but being kept in the dark only feeds their fear. So wherever you are, I hope you're safe. Keep sane. Distract your kids. Try to be happy. It sounds really weird in times like this, but yes, try to be happy if you can. Bye.